Hello, and welcome to the show Gold Squadron Gays. It's the podcast where two Star Wars loving gays break down each episode of their favorite Star Wars TV shows while also being gay as hell. I'm your host, Bradley Brower.
I'm your other host, Charles Rogers. Just make the joke, Bradley. Just make the joke on air that you've been tormenting me with for the past 15 minutes.
And today we're going to be making some choices.
There it fucking is. Oh my god. He opened the pre-meeting with that. And listeners, I need you to understand, I just finished watching Dragon Age Absolution, so my emotions are like a taut bowstring at the moment. And Bradley's just like, you want to make some choices? And he then had to explain the joke to me. I was like, I fucking hate you. I can't do this right now. I can't do this, Bradley. This is bullying on the podcast. If you're just joining us, we are filling what is hopefully the only time between Andor and the Bad Batch by just doing a couple of little discussions on the Tales of the Jedi episodes. So we did the first two, and now we're on three. So that's what we are doing. Bradley, you wanna take us into Tales of the Jedi episode 3?
Yes, and if you didn't already know, we're talking about the episode titled Choices, where the
they
Jedi
fucking got that, Bradley.
This episode, the Jedi Knights investigate the mysterious death of one of their own. So Charles, did you like this episode?
I did. I liked it better on the second viewing when I watched it again, because I watched it the first time and then I watched it again a little later on. And I liked it the second time when I was focusing less on the mystery, because the first time I watched, I was like, oh, there's a mystery, let's solve it. And the episode isn't really about that. The episode is more about Dooku's fraying relationship with the Jedi Order. And, the way that he's drifting away from it. We know that in between this episode and the next episode, he will actually leave the Order. And that story is told in Dooku Jedi Lost. But this one, they use Mace Windu in this episode as a really good parallel. And it's meant to demonstrate, the way that Dooku and the Jedi are drifting apart. And we're also kind of seeing a little bit of again, reinforcing that people are not happy with the Republic. The Republic is extremely corrupt and bureaucratic. And Dooku sees these things and wants to change them. But, definitely the weakest of the 3 Dooku episodes for me, but it was still a really strong episode. And I really liked it as a nice little mystery short. What about you, Bradley? Did you like it?
I did. I actually agree with you, because first viewing, I was like, what's the murder mystery, right? Like, who's the killer or whatever the story was supposed to be. It's like a detective story almost. And then second viewing, you're right. I was like, oh, I'm seeing more of his disillusionment of the Republic and what that affects him in what ways. And you see on one hand, you have him being like, something's just not right here. We're doing wrong things. And even one of the characters calls the Jedi the Senate's lapdogs or something at one point. And he's like, ooh, yeah, I guess you're right. And then you pair that with Mace Windu, who, he kind of suspects that he's being a goody two shoes for no reason. And then he's just like, oh, wait, did you know you were going to become a master this whole time? He kind of doesn't trust it.
Yeah, and it's, if there's one thing that this episode is really starting to hammer home, it is the disillusion of trust between Dooku and the Order. Because we know I believe Dooku eventually sits the council. I am 99.9% sure that happens, but I didn't double check it. But it's that fraying of trust. And I think I mentioned before, I think it was a really good choice to have Mace Windu be the one he was paired up with. Because Mace Windu is so about the rules. Right. And he's the perfect emblematic figure for what the Jedi are during this point in history. We think a lot about the Jedi as in terms of the ones who are operating against them or not like normal Jedi, right? We think of Anakin Skywalker, Qui-Gon Jinn, Dooku, Obi-Wan to a certain extent, but there are also some Jedi who are very, very clear examples of what the Jedi of this time period were like, and none more clear than Mace Windu. So I thought it was a nice team up between these two characters.
Yeah, I think it also opens the door for if there is a season 2 or something, maybe if we got some Mace Windu episodes, they would be kind of maybe the opposite of this. Maybe we would get to see a different side of Mace Windu, possibly. Maybe when he's younger, perhaps, when he's not so strict on the rules, or maybe he's always been that way. I don't know. I think that would be a nice thing to show, because we don't get too much of Mace Windu, obviously he's in the prequels, and then in the Clone Wars, but we don't get a lot of his character per se. He's just very much, kind of like a stickler, and then for the rules, and we don't get to see different sides of him. So I think it would be nice to maybe change it up if they did something else.
Yeah, he's got some comics and stuff, but with the example of only a few of the Clone Wars episodes, I can't really think of any Mace Windu focused stories. Mace Windu would be an excellent,
Yeah, I think he'd be a good
excellent
choice.
choice to do three shorts on. Like, because he got some stuff in Legends, which I'm not going to touch on. Some of it was really good. Some of it was kind of, I'm not going to go there. But yeah, other than a few episodes that he features in Clone Wars, off the top of my head, I can only think of like one-shot comic issues and things that have
And
focused on him.
And I think it would be great to open up his very first episode with him, waking up, the rain is pouring on his face and his arm is gone. And it actually, or don't, oh no, his hands are gone, right? He cuts off both of his hands. He wakes up on the ground, both of his hands are gone, and
Look,
somebody finds him and takes him
you and
in.
Samuel L. Jackson both. I'm sorry, I don't like the idea that Mace Windu could be resurrected after the events of Revenge of the Sith, because to me, Mace Windu tied so very heavily into what the Jedi were, all of their accomplishments and failings during this period, that his death symbolically beginning the extinction of the Jedi Order as we know it during this period. And as we know from the current canon, it never to this day has gone back to the way it was. I just think that's too perfect. I just think it's too good. However, I will say that I have been convinced by Dark Side Divas that if they bring him back, it has to be for a buddy cop show with Jar Jar Binks.
Mm,
Have you watched those episodes of Clone Wars recently, Bradley?
I have
Because I
not.
have. I have. They're better than you remember.
Oh God.
The Jar Jar Binks fucks episodes are actually pretty good.
Okay, I might have to go back and watch some of these.
I've been telling Bradley for months now. I'm like, you really need to do a Clone Wars rewatch, dude. You haven't done it in a while. Do you want to talk about some of the voice cast?
Yeah, let's do it. There's
Let's talk
some
about some
interesting
of the voice
ones.
cast on this episode. Obviously, Corey Burton returning as Count Dooku. We have Terrence T.C. Carson reprising his role from the Clone Wars as Mace Windu. He was in Final Destination 2. He's the original voice of Kratos in God of War. We have Brian George playing Ki-Adi-Mundi. He was in Batman the Killing Joke, Hotel Transylvania. Can we take a break from the voice cast and talk about the Ki-Adi-Mundi's ridiculous hood, though?
Covering his head, like why he probably had to go
Covering
to a
completely
special
covering his head.
he had to go to a special clothing store just for that hood. Like, or the Jedi had to specially make his robes for him so to cover his giant forehead.
That's incredible. That is absolutely incredible. Like, I'm sorry, we're supposed to be having this like beautiful moment about like transcending into the force or whatever. And then there's Ki-Adi-Mundi with a
Yeah.
robe that has a hood the size of the fucking like head. It's such a ridiculous
It,
design. Instead of covering it like resting on the top of his head because his head is so big, it comes down like
yeah.
over his forehead.
It's just weird.
It takes me out of this moment like so much. It's just I had to point that out because it was hilarious. Moving on, Samaj is being voiced by Terrell Tilford. Looks like is this person's name. They've been in Days of Our Lives. They were in Serenity. They were the news anchor in Serenity. So for my sci-fi fans out there, Senator Larrick is being played by Theo Rossi. Theo Rossi has been in Sons of Anarchy, been in Luke Cage. Those are the things that I see here that I recognize him from. And then finally, the guard is being voiced by Andrew. I am so sorry. I'm going to do my best with this slide name. Casino, I think is how we pronounce that. He is a Star Wars veteran, actually. He has been in Star Wars Visions, and he's also Saw Gerrera in The Bad Batch. Let me see if he's
Huh.
also Saw Gerrera in the Clone Wars. I'm curious now. Oh, he's in Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order 2. I'm just going down the page, just seeing what other Star Wars stuff he's been in. Yes, he was Saw Gerrera in Star Wars The Clone Wars 2. So that's who's voicing our little guard. He's got a little voice cameo.
And then he was previously married to Vanessa Marshall.
Really?
So that's interesting.
That is an okay, we're not going to get into that.
I was gonna say that's taking us down a rabbit hole I don't want to go down, but that was just a
I'm
weird
not
fact.
going down there. No. I can't go down that rabbit hole yet. I have to go down it later.
So I want to talk about the two characters, Samaj and the guard, because
Okay.
these guards, one, outfits are fabulous, and then two, Samaj has these golden nails like on his outfit that are so pretty. Like you're just like they're like little Weapon X, Wolverine claws on his nails, and it's perfect for the outfit.
I love like basically everything design wise that happens with Star Wars pre Phantom Menace because it gets to be all this like it gets to be this like extravagant golden age like
Yeah, it's just very regal.
beautiful
Yeah.
wild stuff and I love it. I love that's part of the thing too about the High Republic is because the High Republic's got the same thing going on. It's so vibrant and
Mhm.
colorful. I just love it. I love how it lets in because once we get into the Empire, it's always so gray and dull and everything's run down because it's awful. And the sequel era is still kind of trying to figure out what its aesthetic is. It's still like working that out. But pre-Phantom Menace stuff, no, they get to go absolutely ape shit. You haven't seen any of the leaks from the Acolyte set, right? I've kept you away from those.
I mean, I couldn't help but notice there were a few things online that I may or may not have looked at because it's so fucking cool and I had to look.
Right. Same deal. Same deal with what we've seen of the Acolyte too.
Yeah,
Like the
it's going to be really
costuming and the
interesting.
design and things. It's going to be really interesting. But yeah, all this pre-Phantom Menace stuff. I love when pre-Phantom Menace stuff just gets to go like absolutely gaudy and beautiful with it.
So you brought up Kiadi Mundi earlier. I know there's a
He's
couple
also
different.
in this
I was gonna
for
say
some reason.
there's a couple other Jedi's in the crowd or whatever. I thought you might want to bring up. Not you don't have to because they don't talk, so we don't have to talk about who voices them or anything. But you could talk about some of the people who are in
Yeah,
the
let me
crowd.
pull up the episode and see if I can spot some people.
Spot a few people.
I'll
Somebody
just
who doesn't have a character, I don't think has a character name. That stood out to me only because obviously we've been watching House of the Dragons. Is the one woman with the white dreadlocks, and I was like, is she from a particular house by the sea? Like
is she a Valarian?
she looks like a
Well, let's have a
Valar,
look. Let me see. Yeah. Oh, I love those white dreadlocks though. That is absolutely beautiful.
right?
Let's
And
see
I
if I
was
can
like,
see
who
some
is
of the
that?
people who are in this funeral scene. Yeah, the only one I recognize off the bat is I see Plo Koon, Kiadi Mundi. I don't recognize Sissa 10, I think, is there. I don't recognize anybody else
There's
that I'm
two
just seeing as
more.
I'm watching the scene play out. Oh, there's Tara Sinube.
Yep.
I can see Depa Balaba. There's a better shot. But that seems to be, for the most part, the recognizable Jedi that are there. I don't recognize any of the others.
There's one more at the very end when they're walking away for a hot second, a little old lady that we all know and love.
Oh, there's Jocasta Nu. Yep. Yeah, that was everybody that I recognized as being in
Right.
this episode.
It's
Uh,
just a lot of random people, but I thought it was nice that they threw in a few that we would notice.
maybe we'll learn more about them later.
You never know. Maybe they're important later on.
Maybe they're important later. Yeah, I've double checked Wikipedia and Wikipedia. It does say Yoda appears in this episode. He might be in the
Uh,
funeral
I
scene,
think
but
he's in the funeral scene. Yeah.
I might have missed him when I was leafing through looking for Jedi. Depa Balaba. Yeah, they don't identify any of. I love those other Jedi designs though, particularly the one standing next to Mace Windu. I would like to. What is their deal? What is their story? I want to see them in things, please.
Yeah. Like, why not? Maybe they have a dragon that they ride.
Funny you should mention that because that does happen in the High Republic. There
Huh.
is a Jedi that rides a dragon, two Jedi that ride a dragon at one point.
Interesting.
Well, Bradley, do you have any final thoughts on this episode? There's not that much here to
Yeah,
go
no,
over.
it wasn't too crazy of an episode. It was good overall though. I mean, like you said, I think I would place it slightly under the last one. I think it was just not as full of stuff. It was more a little bit of action, and then that it was kind of the conflict was over pretty quickly. So it was a quick. It's a more of a character study. It doesn't really have to do too much with the action stuff. So
Yeah, I think I would agree. I think it was a very nice character study. I think on balance, I preferred the last one, but it's still really, really good. And it's an interesting look at a character. And I cannot stress this enough. We have not seen a lot about in visual media up to this point, which is part of why I liked it. Just gonna throw that out there. No, I thought it was good. I liked it. Definitely a nice middle chapter, bridging the gap between where we saw Dooku in Justice and where we're going to see him in the next episode. All right. Well, Bradley, if you want to go ahead and run the socials, and we'll be back later with the Sith Lord.
Thank you for listening to Gold Squadron Gaze. Did Charles fuck something up? Send us a message at goldsquadrongaze@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at Gold Squad Gaze. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Gold Squadron Gaze. Subscribe to us on YouTube at Gold Squadron Gaze, where we post the podcast as well as exclusive content. Please join us next week and every week for more of Gold Squadron Gaze.